We can't say the future without AI. I mean, there's no way around it. 50% of workers now believe AI is going to improve their experience. When I come into the meeting room, I need a way to incorporate my AI with what's going on in the meeting. It's almost a bring your own AI type of a concept. Most of what we do in our day-to-day is going to change significantly.
Hear the latest AV trends and predictions in this episode of Crestron's Smarter Spaces podcast on your preferred podcast platform.
Some of the first alarm systems, if we recall, intrusion alarm systems were key operated. If you've got somebody sticking a knife in your back and you get to your door and you can then put an emergency code in that does open your door, but also informs law enforcement that this is an emergency situation. Now somebody's going to have to come up with a solution for that where you smile differently or you grin or you pick your nose or something. I don't know.
He's making a break for it. Get him. No, I was just picking my nose. He's picking his nose. Get him.
On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk Apple's potential doorbell, maximizing smart spaces, and curiosity. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 465, where things are moving. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matty Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Scotty Allen. He's the COO at Josh.ai. How you doing, Scotty?
Doing great. Excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. Then we have Mr. Jason Knott. He is an evangelist over at D-Tools. How you doing, Jason?
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you both for being here. All right, gentlemen, we are going to kick this off with a couple of stories. We're not going to get into anything out of CES because we're recording on Monday. And the only thing that's really leaked is LG's got a bunch of TVs that are really big and AI and appliances, and I haven't seen anything else yet. So next week, we'll talk about all of that. But this week, we're going to kick it off with a story that comes to us from CE Pro. The latest Apple smart home rumor is a video doorbell that uses Face ID to unlock doors. This rumored doorbell system is going to obviously leverage Face ID to unlock your door the same way your iPhone unlocks itself. It is obviously kind of slotted in there to compete with Nest and Ring, probably a little bit of Doorbird as well. There is no release date. There's nothing that we've really seen other than this rumor. And because we love talking about rumors, Scotty, if this comes into play, as Jason laughs, if this does happen, and this obviously would be, we're assuming part of the HomeKit universe, if you will, they've shown some promise with HomeKit. A doorbell is honestly a fairly easy barrier of entry to get back into that game a little bit. Do you see this being able to compete with the other manufacturers that are on the market? Again, provided they can bring it to market, it's effective and priced appropriately.
First, just kind of, wow, a decade sort of late. Apple gets into things and does a good job when they get to it, but I'm just surprised it took so long for them to even dabble in this. As far as compete goes, though, in the space that we're in and being able to work on CI level projects, the doorbells and stations that go into projects that a lot of our industry deploys, you're not changing the batteries every 2 months. There's not all this upkeep that we see with these DIY and a little bit of do it for me markets. So, I think it's interesting. I'd be curious kind of how it's powered, what options they have around it. Apple tends to do things well when they do it and they put their toe in the water. So I'm curious kind of how they've maybe potentially tried to solve some of the real concerns around it. But I don't know. It just sounds like another ecosystem locked solution that'll be available to, if you have, the newest iPhone and a certain color HomePod, right, or something like that. But as far as being able to integrate with broader systems, even through HomeKit, I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, that's definitely high on my concern as well, because I don't want a HomePod. Jason, when you see this, they're not the first people to really investigate utilizing some form of facial recognition. There's a couple of security manufacturers out there that have facial recognition for disarming your alarm system. Obviously, phones have it. Ring has a feature where it can track your face, so it knows kind of who's coming home and do things from that standpoint, from an announcement standpoint, and et cetera. Is there a market for this, or is the Face ID unlock of your front door going to throw the general consumer off or give them concern?
It's a good question, because you never know what the appetite is amongst the consumers for what I'll call biometrics. You see all the movies with the retina scans and the fingerprint scan, and I think people saw that as somewhat invasive. Look, just kind of a quick history lesson is some of the first alarm systems, if we recall, intrusion alarm systems were key operated. Mm-hmm. And then what happened was people came up with this, the plausible but rare occurrence where somebody forces the homeowner to open the door, or you lose the key. You lost the key. Now they can turn on and off your alarm system and get in. So that was the advent of the delayed entry keypad, which was designed so that if you've got somebody sticking a knife in your back and you get to your door, and you can then put an emergency code in that does open your door, but also informs law enforcement that that this is an emergency situation, without letting the bad guy know that you've done this. So, but that created the false alarm problem. There was false alarms were pretty rare when people carried keys and turned their alarm systems on and off at their homes. But the delayed entry keypad exacerbated that greatly. And now we created all these false alarm legislation and things. So the reason I'm saying that is because you never know what a new idea might spawn in terms of another problem. Mm-hmm. To me, this is a little bit of it goes back to that same old thing of, Joel, some guy's got a knife in my back, and I'm just going to walk up to my door and show my face, and it's going to open the door. So it's kind of, now somebody's going to have to come up with a solution for that, where you smile differently, or you grin, or you pick your nose or something. I don't know. So that then that informs law enforcement that somebody's forcing you to open the door. So it's an interesting question. I don't know where it's going to end. Clearly, the appetite for biometric, facial recognition, voice recognition, all those sorts of things, those barriers have dropped greatly. But I feel like there could be more problems that could be created from something like this down the road. Yeah,
I don't love Face ID on my phone, let alone to enter the house.
I'm thinking it's also, real quick, I'm laughing because it's almost like a blink twice. If you're in trouble situation, you're at your front door and you got to come up with other gestures. I do think anything we can do to simplify the entry and exit of a home. I fall more in the camp where don't come to my home, but I don't always lock the door, right? So the more it auto locks and it auto knows I'm on the way home, whether or not my phone is telling the door that it's me, or it's my face, or it's something else. And I also think, with your phone, you have, 6 to 8 inches to do Face ID. At a door, there's other things that probably we could look at to be more intelligent. Stature, is there a car parked, other things that could help kind of simulate, is this the real homeowner? And I think it's interesting that data like this will probably be the tip of the iceberg of really trying to determine what is the key factor to unlock that. Is it that you drove the right car home, or is it that your face looks the right way, right? So
I'm waiting for the allergy season, when you come to your door and you're blinking SOS because you're allergic to the pollen. But also, I just didn't realize a key was that complicated. Like, we have all the smart stuff too, but man, I just use a stinking key 9 times out of 10 because I didn't know it was that hard.
Well, everything looks great on paper. I laugh because I read the other day that there's a lot of retailers now who are eliminating self-checkout in certain urban areas because the money that they were saving on not hiring the labor, they are losing more than that in theft. Oh, so yeah. It created just a solution, but then it created or exacerbated another problem. So again, you never know where it'll end up, but it'll be interesting.
That's very true. All right, we're going to move on to our next story. This comes to us from Residential Tech Today: how to maximize small spaces with smart furnishings. Go read through this article, especially if you've not thought of smart furnishings or if you have not heard that term before. It's a combination, kind of blanket term for furniture and things that are smart in some way, shape, or form, but also automated to allow you to modify the space in your home. There's some really cool concepts here, including beds that can raise into the ceiling or lowered back down, storage units that replace dressers that, again, can be raised or lowered or recessed into walls, all kinds of very cool things. Jason, I want to start with you on this. Is this going to be a very kind of boutique option, or is this kind of the science fiction future that is headed our way, especially in any urban environment where you have a 400 square foot apartment and everything just kind of moves around to modify that space to what you're doing at that time?
Two ways I look at this. One is clearly the whole tiny home trend is big, and it's continuing to be big. A lot of integrators are dealing in the MDU spaces of a premium. At the boutique level, I would say, we already see appliance lifts for mixers that come out of the kitchen cabinet. We see TV lifts. Obviously, I've seen cabinets that actually motorize. I remember talking to an integrator who did a house in Florida where it was a guest house, and the entire guest house rotated 360 degrees so that one portion of the house could always be facing the sunrise or the sunset based upon whatever the homeowner wanted. So talk about a niche. Yeah. So there's definitely a niche. So I would say, yes, you're going to see the tiny house trend continue, and cute things are going to be needed, and space saving things. But I also see at the elite level, again, I think I've mentioned this before, my dad's, my stepmother is a high-end designer in Scottsdale, and almost every single kitchen she does has a lift built into the cabinetry for the mixer and those sorts of things. So at the high end, there's definitely a market there.
Yeah, there's nothing better than a motorized downdraft because they're very entertaining to replace. All right, Scotty. First of all, this is the first time I've ever read an article in this industry where it talked about making your bed, which I found entertaining. But more importantly, I love the concept from a technological standpoint of motorized beds and furniture that comes in and out of walls and all this other stuff. I'm fascinated with it from a technology standpoint. I'm curious about whether this is something that is going to catch on. And then do we as an industry want anything to do with the automation of this stuff from a not only a complexity, but also a liability standpoint?
I agree with you on, I think this stuff is cool. Like, I wish there were hotel rooms that you could go stay in and sort of experience this. We definitely run into integrators in primarily New York market that dabble in this stuff, and it's definitely fun to see. But yeah, the applications and how it's going to roll out in the real world of the CI channel. One of the things that, I was reading this article, we've dabbled in not as much kind of the 400 square foot apartment situation, but more the bonus room. So the room that's the home office can be the gym, maybe sometimes is like a spare third guest room or something. And those are the rooms that, I don't know how many folks still have home offices, but I certainly do. And I don't want to see my desk at the end of the day. I don't want to go in that room. I don't want to go near it. I love my job, but I want to step away from it. And so how does it disappear? How does it fold up? How does that become the gym the next hour? And so we actually did some work with a few different companies on kind of like this invisible technology concept. And it was really meant to transform rooms. And the idea was, yeah, exactly, that you're in a space and maybe using automations, it knows that in the morning it's a yoga studio, and in the afternoon it's actually where you're going to be taking your work calls. And I do think that is a problem that doesn't just exist in New York or high dollar per square foot markets, but in all of our projects. How can we do better with the spaces that we have, and how can we use technology to evolve it? Yeah. And then your last question around the liability of it. Yeah. I don't know, getting tucked into bed, automated when you don't want to, and then getting pushed up to the ceiling to never be seen again. Probably not the best scenario. Yeah, the automation part around this is definitely challenging. We've had some big projects with automated components like doors and so forth. Automated fire pits fall into this category. When you have physical things moving in the space that could inflict harm if someone was in the wrong spot, how do you use cues like audio cues like fire pit turning on, or how to use motion sensors to make sure folks aren't there? I think it's not just about the technology to move it. It's about all the technology to make sure it's safe, which is cool, but also kind of is required to be there.
Yeah, it's a great point. Jason, just to kind of echo off that, as an industry, are we ready for the liability of a moving bed?
Well, think about, when I was reading this, it reminded me of about 5 years ago. Remember when Cedia launched that Cedia Propel?
Yeah.
They had a handful of companies. Amazon was in it, Guard Dog was in it, Immersive Gym. But two of the companies that were in it, one was a smart bed, and I don't remember the name of the company, unfortunately. And Kohler was in it with its automated toilet seat.
Yep.
So hey, you don't want to get trapped by a toilet seat, let alone a bed, motorized toilet seat. Auto slide, remember the motorized door? They were part of it too. So it's for about, I would say about 5 years ago, dealers were targeted towards this. I'm assuming, all I go back to is the limitation of liability clause that I hope every integrator has in their contracts, that, unless they're doing an installation that is negligent and or purposefully, dangerous, that they're protected from that standpoint, from an insurance standpoint. So I would think they would be covered from this, from a liability standpoint, just like they are, for an alarm system or something else that goes haywire.
Yeah, I continually look at these things and do just because you can doesn't mean you should. I don't love the idea of automating the fire pit's okay. Automating the big, massive nano wall is not something I want to play with. Other than the fact that it's fun to do, but I don't want that liability. I don't like it. All right, let's hit our last story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Systems. Who's in charge of curiosity? How to encourage out-of-the-box solutions to your company's challenge. This is from our good friend, Mr. Henry Clifford, talking about receiving a phone call from one of their existing customers who were selling their home and wanted to get them in touch with the new homeowners who were taking over the security and the remote support and all of that jazz. And Henry realized that their current methodology of facilitating that changeover wasn't going to fit that customer because they were out of town. And surprisingly enough, Henry was still using paper to do this. Go read the article. It like most of Henry's articles, they're really good and force you to think a little bit. Scotty, I want to start with you. How often do or should integrators kind of look at their processes and again, not necessarily do a deep dive, but just take a quick review and try to find those little pitfalls, like in this case, requiring a paper sign off for security monitoring, and try and find ways to simplify that and make that easier for not only their customers, but also for them internally?
Yeah, well, first, love the article. Henry's great. We love working with him. So excited to talk about this one specifically. But yeah, to your question, I'm not an integrator. I've always been on kind of the manufacturer side of this. And my assumption is, people are busy. They're running businesses. They're dealing with client concerns. And so how do you optimize the day-to-day of the business? It depends how big of a problem is and how often you encounter it, and then whether or not you're going to address it. So I see why, in this case, Henry's like, yeah, okay, we have a good opportunity to digitize our legal agreements. If our clients need it, let's look into some solutions. And that's when he finally got around to kind of moving to some of the ways, like all the agreements our dealers sign with us, they're digital. So the business they do with us is digital. But for an integrator bringing that into their side of the house, it takes time, it takes changes. You have to probably change. You maybe have some internal folks that are helping with some of those agreements, and so they have to learn. But yeah, my assumption is there isn't enough time for this stuff. And this will be a little bit of a plug, but on the Josh.ai side of things, one of our big initiatives is trying to grow more RMR for our dealers, because we see the value of their business long term, having reoccurring revenue built into their business model. So when they go to sell their business, it's not just the next 3 jobs they were planning on doing, and that's the value of their business, but they can show that they have 150 clients all paying X amount per month, and there's a value to that and a multiple that can be paid on it. We also realize that overnight managing credit cards and the whole process to make sure that you keep someone on an RMR or annual plan or 5-year plan is complexity of the business that they may not have bandwidth for. So we offer tools and solutions to help make that easy to bring it in, because we all realize that that change is not the core business. The core business is working with the clients and adding technology to their spaces. So I think he shines a good light on an area that maybe a lot of folks weren't doing digital contracts, but in reality, there's a lot of ways to save time through tools that we often don't get to plug in.
Let me throw in, Matt, this is really right in the wheelhouse of D-Tools, because obviously the software, they're adding modules, constantly, whether it's D-Tools payment for automated payments, whether it's inventory management that's getting ready to come out in a couple of weeks, whether it's the service contract module for how to create and manage service contracts. And a lot of the changes that occur, software is a dynamic thing. It's changing constantly. D-Tools is sent as a monthly update on all of its software. And a lot of those changes come from people like Henry and people out there in the field who recognize changes and needs. And the software can really kind of help partner and guide people into some of these new operational procedures. I know one of the biggest bugaboos with software is guys are like, I don't want to change my whole business to accommodate this software, which is a very, very valid point. So my point being that you can use the software as kind of, a partner in terms of helping you move into some of these areas. So Henry's things are always great. My big takeaway from this is also, as he said, reward people within your organization who come up with out-of-the-box thinking. Somebody comes up with a great idea, you should reward that person, whether it's, a percentage of the money that he or she is going to save your company, or a percentage of the money that they're going to create in new revenue, or if it's just a flat, pat on the back and a Pepsi and $500 or whatever it is in front of the whole company to show people, hey, we reward out of the box thinking, and people are looking for ways to move our company forward.
Yeah, that's a great thing, and something that Henry's talked about in multiple articles. I am going to ask you to kind of play lawyer again one more time. When doing things like, and again, we're just using the example of switching over to an electronic sign-off, how much should dealers be looking at the regulations in their state, in their province, in their country, to ensure that they can accept a digital signature of, in this case, an alarm contract? Because not every state will allow that. I know in Ontario, it wasn't up until 5-6 years ago that you could sign a home, sign your purchase agreement on a home over a digital copy. You literally had to meet with your real estate agent and sign it in paper. It was not accepted until it was on paper in front of them. And then they faxed it or emailed it in the ridiculousness of how that all works. How often are integrators looking into, cool things that save them time, but may or may not actually be valid?
Yeah, I put this right up there with the New Year's resolution of, check your insurance, check the state of your contract every year. You should be doing, there should be standard things like this. You mentioned a perfect example, Matt, of things that they should be looking at every year to make sure they're up to date on it.
Mm-hmm.
Credit card acceptance fees. Can you charge, what's the difference between a surcharge and a convenience fee? It's state by state.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, what do you call it? Are you going to charge 3% more? Well, you can't call it one thing in one state. You can't call it it's got to be called a convenience fee versus a surcharge, or it can't be a percent. It's got to be dollars. There are all sorts of really crazy things that crazy. I'm sure they're there for a reason, but guys need to look at that on a consistent basis to make sure they're up to date.
Yeah, that's a great point. And just before we end, I am going to push back on the one thing you said, Jason, on people not wanting to change their business to work with software, whether it's D-Tools or something else. Yeah, change your business to work with some software. Good Lord, it'll save you so much time, as Scotty laughs. All right, let's wrap it there. Thank you both for joining us. Jason, if people want to connect with you, learn more about D-Tools, visit you at ISE, well, maybe not you, but the company, where can they do that?
Right. We will have a booth at Integrated Systems Europe that is 2L500 at ISE. So please come by and see the booth. You can obviously go to our website, d-tools.com, and you can follow me on all the social media channels.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Scotty, thank you for joining us. If people want to connect with you, learn more about Josh.ai, connect with some of your people on the ground at ISE, where can they do that?
You can just find us on all the socials at Josh.ai, spelled out D-O-T, or our website, www.josh.ai.
Excellent. Thank you again. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter or X or every other social platform at Matt D. Scott. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Hello, this is Steve Greenblatt, host of AVNation's A State of Control podcast. Each month, Rich Fregosa and I explore trending topics related to control programming and automation in the audiovisual industry. We speak with a variety of AV professionals who share their perspectives, knowledge, and experiences. Please join us for this monthly conversation. Check out A State of Control on avnation.tv or wherever you get your podcasts.